Welcome to Brain Info Live, for everyone in the brain health community. Brain Info Live is about hope, health, support, education, and you. Whether you're living with Alzheimer's or a caregiver, family member, or loved one of someone who is, Brain Info Live is here for everybody.
All right. Hello. This is Dr. Young Trin, Chief Medical Officer of Irvine Clinical Research. And welcome back. This is our 13th episode of Brain Info Live program in Southern California. And today is all about what steps and strategies that we can use to communicate with our loved ones and deal with changes. Specifically, we'll provide tips for caregivers, families, and medical professionals on how to help those with Alzheimer's and other related dementias. So, with that said, you may notice that right behind me is a treadmill that I'm sitting on, and I'm doing that because I'm going to get ready to jumpstart exercise with John Lewis, also known as J. Lou, the fitness guru from Atlanta, Georgia.
Hey, I'm J. Lou, your fitness guru. I want to welcome you to Brain Info Live. Today we're about to do stretching plus body sculpting. In 5 seconds, let's get ready to go. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, watch my form. My feet are straight, good posture, and watch my arms at all times. You ready? Let's go. Elbows in front. Cross. Rest. All right. This next one, I want your hands up. Then I'm going to cross. You ready? Let's go! Come on! 3, let's go! Other arm, let's go! Come on! 5, good job. Now I want a little squat. And what we're gonna do is when you go down and you put it back in the pocket. You ready? Let's go. 5. Rest. All right. Our next one, I want you to turn your feet in, straighten your legs out, and we're gonna go out and in. You ready? Let's go. We're stretching those glutes. We also getting that upper body. I need one more. Let's go. And good. Okay. Toes out. Put a little squat in. And I'm going to turn. And I'm going to come to this position. You ready? Let's go. And 5. Other side. We just did a lot of motions, a little details, but our next set, we're gonna add a lunge into it. So let's get ready. Okay, now we're gonna get in a lunge position, but we're working on that isometric position while we stretch and also tone. Okay, here, keep this leg at 90. Don't go too far here. It's right here. Arm here, tilt, and let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, switch. Make sure you have good posture, chest up, and let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, this one, we're gonna hold down, and then a little weight out and in. You ready? Down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, our next one. I want you to cross. Keep your balance, keep your feet straight. And we're gonna go down, and then I'm gonna extend all the way up. Ready? Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Cross, feet straight, down. I'm gonna go underhand, then press up. Ready? And go. 5. Our last one. We're gonna go to a deep squat. Remember, go at your level. Okay, I'm gonna go down, I'm gonna pull, and then I'm gonna short pull. You ready? Let's go. 1, 2, come on. 3, 4, and 5. Hey, make sure you work on your form at all times, and as you're doing these videos, you will get better. So work on your form and work on the details. I'm J. Lou, and see you later. Bye.
All right, that's great. I think I lost a few pounds just watching him there. We got a few videos for you real quick on communication that we'll watch right now.
Tina, it's time to wake up. Let's go to the bathroom to clean up. Let's get out of bed.
I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to get ready.
Come on, not again. Please don't give me a hard time. Your bed is wet. You need to wash up. It's 9 a.m. It's time for your breakfast and medication.
I don't feel like it. I don't need your help.
Stop it and calm down.
Don't touch me. How dare you telling me what to do? I don't need your help.
I am just doing my job. Let's get ready for the day.
I don't need you. Get out of my house and leave me alone.
Good morning, Tina. This is Jane, your caregiver. Your breakfast is ready. Would you like to eat downstairs?
I like my bed. I want to stay here. You can bring my breakfast here in bed.
I can do that. I see that your bed is wet, though. I would like to make your bed so you can rest comfortably. Meanwhile, would you like to eat at the dining table?
No, I want to have my food here in bed.
Okay. How about if you eat right over here, just while I make your bed?
Okay.
Okay.
Fine.
It can be devastating when someone you love is diagnosed with Alzheimer's or another dementia. You may wonder if your friend or relative will be the same person, or if you should keep trying to communicate. The answer to both of these concerns is yes. A diagnosis doesn't change a person overnight. You can still have meaningful conversations with someone with dementia. Please don't stay away. They need your love and support now more than ever. When talking with someone with dementia, use short, clear sentences. Look them in the eye and introduce yourself. Address the person by name and treat them with dignity. Avoid baby talk. They're an adult. Don't try to reason or argue or remind them about what they've forgotten. You wouldn't ask a blind person to see. Don't ask someone with dementia to remember. As the disease progresses, communication skills will change. The person with dementia may have trouble finding the right word or understanding you. If they speak multiple languages, they may confuse the two. This all can be very frustrating, but you can still meet them where they are and find ways to communicate, even without words. Your tone, facial expressions, body language, and overall attitude can speak volumes. Exploring new ways to communicate can be a beautiful thing and will help your person feel valued and loved. Learn more about dementia and get the support you need by calling 858-492-4400 or visiting alzsd.org.
All right, valuable videos with lots of good tips. At this time, I would like to introduce everyone to Dr. Edward Zamrini, who's a good friend of mine. He is an internationally recognized memory disorder specialist. Since 1988, he's been dedicated to the care of patients with memory problems, teaching and also doing research. Dr. Zamrini has been the principal investigator or the co-PI on 73 clinical trials in Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. He's board certified in neurology, and he actually holds a subspecialty in in geriatric neurology, as well as behavioral neurology and neuropsychiatry. So welcome, Dr. Z. Very awesome to have you here with us today.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, Dr. Z, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and the work that you do around dementia?
So I've always been fascinated by the way the brain works, and neurology was the best answer to satisfy me. And so it's funny how certain parts of the brain are responsible for certain activities. For instance, we've learned from stroke patients that if they have a stroke in a particular part of the brain, they lose the ability to speak, but may still be able to understand. If they have a stroke in a different area, they lose the ability to understand, but may still be able to speak. And one can get into more detail and it can get a lot more complicated. But brain functions can be explained by brain location and other situational factors. When you look at someone with Alzheimer's disease, even though they have a dementia and you think of the dementia as affecting all their brain, actually some parts of the brain are affected more than others. And so communicating with patients with dementia, they may have certain parts of the brain that allow you to communicate maybe in different ways, for instance, with gestures or through the tone of your voice or through your approach. And so we can take advantage of this kind of knowledge in how we communicate with our loved ones and how we can still treat them humanely as individuals and with respect and dignity.
Right. That's great. So we're talking about communication today and dealing with changes. Are there certain conversations or topics that we should steer clear from?
In general, you should be able to have any conversation you want within the patient's capacity to understand. And that capacity depends on whether they're in the earliest stages, middle stages, or late stages of Alzheimer's disease. Now, if you know a topic irritates a particular, your loved one, what's the point of bringing it up? So you have to ask yourself, what am I trying to achieve by bringing this topic up? And then it's how do you bring up the topic and how do you use your knowledge of the patient in order to present what you want to say in a way that is palatable, tolerable to them. So really your approach should rely on your knowledge of the person you love or your friend or your acquaintance, and and where they are in the disease, and how how much they are able to understand, and also what they like and what they don't like. Okay, it's a little bit like asking a cat to swim. Cats hate swimming. So you don't ask somebody with Alzheimer's disease to do something that they've hated all their life and then expect them all of a sudden now, because for whatever reason you feel that they should be engaged in this topic. So don't bring up topics that are irritating to them. And if you happen to mention something irritating to them, back off, back off the subject, change the subject, and in a few minutes you'll get back into the rhythm of
Right.
normalcy and be able to engage in a pleasant conversation.
Those are really good tips. Yes, thank you. So let's say I want to talk to my loved ones, but I don't want to overwhelm them with all the information. If I want to have a lot of information, I want to talk to them and they have dementia. What should I do? How do I communicate to someone with dementia without overwhelming them with too much info?
Yeah, I think that point is extremely important, is you don't want to overwhelm them. You still want to be able to communicate, but you don't want to overwhelm them. Think of it a little bit as to, everybody can be overwhelmed with information. In fact, we're bombarded with too much information all the time. So we have to be aware of that when we're talking in particular with someone with dementia. So rather than maybe making complex, long statements, we might cut the sentences down so that they're in little bites rather than a whole paragraph at a time. We might want to focus on one topic at a time rather than bring up multiple possible scenarios in the same sentence. So the more we can simplify, the better. However, note of caution, do not oversimplify. In other words, first, don't treat them as a baby or as a child, because they're a grown adult and they have a lived life. They may forget, but they still have a lived life and they still have memories in some form or another. Don't talk about them in the third person, rather than instead make eye contact, look at them, and let them know that they're the focus of your attention, and chat with them. Try to read their body language if they're able to understand you or not. Also, be cognizant of how you're approaching them. If you meet somebody new and you go, you present your hand and you smile, they'll automatically think of you as a friendly person. If, on the other hand, you're rushing towards that person and in a sort of aggressive way, they may fear that you're attacking them. So your approach, is going to help you communicate with the patient. So try and keep it simple enough at their level without oversimplifying. And you learn that as you start chatting with the person, or especially if, for instance, if it's your spouse, then you've known that person forever and you have a good idea of, what level of complexity. A friend of mine reminded me of how important that is, because in medical school, you learn a lot of medical terminology. And so I was talking to this friend of mine and using some medical terminology, and she told me, "Stop, can you speak English, please?" So we have to remember, to be at the same level as the person we're talking to, not too much different, either above or below, but just at their level.
That's great. What about personality changes? Will my loved one experience personality changes?
Now, sometimes patients with Alzheimer's do not have personality changes, and sometimes they have personality changes according to their spouses for the better, and sometimes for the worse. So again, every person is different, and you have to deal with them according to how they are behaving. If they're the same and you've known them all the time, then you just treat them the same, and you simplify as you need to communicate, depending again on their level of cognitive impairment. If it's for the better, you kind of take advantage of it, if you will, in the sense of you try and keep them happy and keep yourself happy. There are situations, for instance, where patients with dementia get restless around the house. And so their spouse might tell them, "Would you mind helping me fold the clothes, for instance, or wash the dishes, or whatever it is." And for them, it's a validation that they're doing something useful, as long as it's a chore that's acceptable to them. Of course, if you're trying to force on them a chore that they hate, that's going to create conflict. So you have to use your judgment as you approach the patient and go, okay, what might they like to do? What might be enjoyable to them? Or what might give them some validation that they are still useful, they are still providing help, they're still doing something constructive, no matter how simple it is. And like the example of, say, folding the clothes, even if they don't fold the clothes well and you need to fold them again later, but as long as they're happy doing the chore, especially if they're doing it with you or for you, it's an act of love on their part, and so you should treat it as such. Now, if the patient's personality changes are, for the worse, let's say they become agitated easily. So you have to look at, well, what are the triggers of that agitation? How might you avoid those triggers? How might you minimize them? And we saw in that very nice video that just changing your approach can result in a very different outcome. And even though the patient who was in bed in that video was still resistant, but after a while, of being treated with dignity and being engaged and given a chance to have an opinion, she calmed down, and it was easier to get the chores done. So again, use your knowledge of the patient, but also consider how they are feeling. And a lot of the time we think, oh, we need to get this done. But it may be important for us to get this done, but it may not be the same priority for the other person. If you remember when you were a teenager, many of us do, many of us don't, but if you remember when you were a teenager and your mom told you do this or do that, most of the time you were like, leave me alone, okay? So as an adult, we also don't like being told what to do, but being engaged, being incorporated in what's being done, it's a lot easier to get the other person to cooperate.
That's great. What about in the circumstance of severe dementia and your loved one doesn't talk anymore? Is there a way to communicate with them so that you know how they're feeling or what they want when it's so severe and they don't talk?
Yes, it's very important to recognize that communication isn't just language. And that even when you're speaking, even if the words don't make sense, the tone of what you're saying comes across. And so the person can tell if you're happy, sad, angry, indifferent, or whatever other emotion. That, even in advanced dementia, patients with advanced dementia, they can sense that. Another thing is, as long as they can see, you can probably use visual cues. And vision is maintained till very, very late in Alzheimer's disease, to where they recognize shapes and objects and persons. Even if they don't recognize the person, sometimes they recognize a person simply by hearing them walk or by seeing how they're walking. They'll recognize the person even though they might not recognize the face. So visual cues can be helpful. For instance, if you'd like a person to sit down, if you use your hand to point to a chair, they'll understand, okay, the hand is pointing to the chair. This is a chair. Okay, they're asking me to sit down, you know. And some of the stuff becomes automatic rather than you don't quite think about it in active thought. It's done kind of subconsciously. So communication can occur that way. Another way to make your life a lot easier, since communication becomes harder in late Alzheimer's, is if you develop certain habits and routines throughout the disease and maybe even before the disease kicks in. For instance, we don't normally think, I have to go brush my teeth. You just go brush your teeth before going to bed. Or I have to go take a shower as soon as I wake up. If that is your routine, then you just do it. And if that is the routine of your patient, they are more likely to just do it than if all of a sudden you change their routine and then you expect them, oh, well, it's nighttime now, you have to go take your shower. And they've always done it in the daytime. So try as much as possible to take advantage of your knowledge of the patient's habits. Try to engage the patient in a happy conversation, regardless of how much they're able to absorb, but just the tone of it, the feel of what you're saying may make them feel more comfortable, and then you may be able to engage them in an activity. For instance, if you want them to go out for a walk with you, and you ask them to go for a walk, and they either don't understand or they just refuse to walk. On the other hand, if you approach them facing them with a smile in a calm way, and you're talking to them in a nice, sweet voice, and then you hold their hand, and then they'll hold your hand, and you put your other hand on theirs, and you're chatting with them, etc. And then you help them stand, and then you start walking with them as you're engaging them in a conversation. All of a sudden you find, okay, this person who I wasn't able to tell come walk with me, you'll find I was able to get them to come and walk with me. And I have tons of stories, but for the interest of time, I won't tell you all those particular stories. But little things like that, you use your knowledge of the person you love, treat them with respect, with dignity, and you can more often than not be able to cajole them into a certain activity that is important for their care and their health.
So I'm a long distance caregiver. My loved one is far away. I have to call them. Should I call them more frequently in shorter calls, or should I call them in long calls but more spread out?
Yeah, so it's hard for most people to maintain attention on a single task. the average person, it's hard to maintain attention on a single task for a prolonged period of time. And probably the same, even more so, applies for the patient with dementia. So as long as you know you can reach them, as long as you know that either somebody can get the phone to them or they will respond to the phone, it's probably easier to divide it up. Maybe not make it, every hour, but you might be able to make it twice a day, maybe even 3 times a day. And the main thing is to let them know you're thinking about them, you love them, you care about them, and you're just checking on them. And you use your judgment and how much they remember of the previous conversation in your next conversation. And so as you chat with them, you'll get a feel for how much do they retain from that phone conversation. And you can then divide up any lengthy conversation into what are the essential parts. Let's say there are 4 important points you want to bring up. Well, bring up 1 point, maybe 2 at most in a conversation, and then leave the rest, leave the rest for a later time or a later date.
That's great. What if my loved one is always angry and doesn't want to talk? Should I just keep trying to talk with them when they're angry, or should I back off?
So when they're angry, you have to look at what is making them angry. And sometimes it can be as simple as they're in pain because of arthritis, or they're too hot, or they're too cold, or they're uncomfortable in one way or another. So always think not only how you're feeling, but how might they be feeling, okay? And think of their anger as a reflection of some level of discomfort on their part. So as you start thinking about their anger more in that sense, then it's easier to go, okay, what could be making them uncomfortable? And what can I do to make them less uncomfortable, to make them more comfortable, so that maybe they won't be as angry as much? And then it'll be easier to communicate. Also, empathy can go a long way. So let's say you're coming up to the patient and you want to tell them to get dressed. That's your agenda. It's not necessarily theirs. So you have to, greet the patient, ask them how they're doing, or, check on them, engage them in light talk. And then you can go, oh, you know what, it's time to put this other set of clothes on, or it's time to do this. How about we do that? Sometimes, can you help me do this? And engage them that way. They're less likely to be angry. Now, on the other hand, there are situations where no matter what you do, they're angry. And in that case, it is better to back off and then come back after a while and go. Again, you have to engage them, letting them know that they're the object of interest rather than you're trying to control them. Because that is one of the things that angers patients the most, is their loss of control over themselves. I mean, I've been, treating patients with Alzheimer's for over 30 years, and this is a very common theme. Patients don't want that diagnosis because they know what ends up happening once that diagnosis is there. They lose autonomy, they lose, all sorts of things that relate to, how they are treated and what decisions they're allowed to make. So really, when you approach the patient, bear those things in mind. Where are they coming from? Are they uncomfortable? Are they in pain? Is there something you can do to make them more comfortable? And then as they see that you're trying to be helpful, it might calm them down. But again, in the case where they're not calming down, back off. You can always come back later and try again, and maybe try a different approach.
That's great. One last question for you. If there's one thing from today's chat that you'd like for people to remember, or something we haven't mentioned yet, what would that one thing be?
I'd say be kind. Be kind to yourself and be kind to the person you're caring for. I think it's important to be kind to yourself because a lot of caregivers put a lot of blame on themselves, and that blame doesn't help them. It doesn't help their caregiving, it doesn't help their loved one, and it definitely doesn't help them. On the other hand, if they take some time to care for themselves, it becomes easier. Their batteries are recharged to deal with the person they're caring for. And be kind to the other person. I mean, I think we all want to and need to be kind to everyone. And it's particularly important when it comes to patients with dementia who are so vulnerable, who are not only vulnerable, but there's a tendency for people to treat them as less than a human being, as less than adult, and that is extremely irritating and demoralizing. So treat them as individuals, as adults, as people with a history. Try to understand them and try to understand where they're coming from. As you engage with them, it'll make your communication with them that much easier.
Thank you so much, Dr. Z. Very, very valuable information you've given all of us today. I want to just thank you for coming on board and chatting with us today. And I hope to do this again with you very soon. So thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, I want to go through a quick poll with you guys now and get some questions asked here to see. And it's a really quick question. True or false, guys? You can still have meaningful conversations with someone diagnosed with dementia. True or false? True or false? You can still have meaningful conversations with someone diagnosed with dementia. True or false? With that. All right. What do you guys think? Can we still have meaningful conversations with someone with dementia? Okay. Well, I think from this session today, the answer is obvious that yes, we can have meaningful conversations, and with Dr. Z's education on how to best do that, we can implement that today. Awesome. Some resources for you guys, both national and local. These resources, along with others, will be emailed to everyone who signed up for today's program. If you haven't signed up to receive today's program, we will email to you. You can go to this website, take a pen and paper. It is bit.ly/BIL sign up. Okay, so again, it's HTTPS and then :/bit.ly/BIL sign up. And so again, in closing, I want to thank Dr. Edward Zamrini, John Lewis, and you, the viewers, for hanging out with us today and just having a special learning time on communication. Thank you so much. you.